Alrighty, so this is the start of chapter 12. We begin chapter 12 with a review on quadratics. Just to start off by saying, you are not assessed on just being able to solve quadratics. The only reason this comes up is because you will have to do that within problems that we do in the upcoming sections, okay? So a couple of things to keep in mind or recall from Algebra 1 are the zero factor property. Okay, what does the zero factor property tell us? And it tells us that if you have something like x minus 3 quantity times x plus 2 quantity equal to 0, the zero factor property says that if you have two things multiplied by each other equal to 0, one or both of them have to be equal to 0. Now, what does that allow us to do? It allows us to say that x minus 3 is equal to 0 and or x plus 2 is equal to 0. So when we solve, we get x equals 3, x is equal to negative 2. And those are our two answers. That's going to be big because part of this section is on factoring. Okay, and then the quadratic formula. I've got a cold, so I am not going to butcher singing this, but I'm sure you guys all can do it. X is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Okay, and where do those come from? If I have y is equal to, in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, the a, b, and c in that equation come from the coefficients of the quadratic in standard form. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of factoring today, a little bit of quadratic formula, and a little bit of just simplifying. Okay, so if I ask you guys to solve this one for x, first thing we'd want to do is probably distribute to get 4x minus 8 is equal to, this would be negative 3x. Be careful, that's got to be plus 6. Negative 3 times negative 2. I'm going to add 3x over here to get 7x is equal to 14. Gives me x is equal to 2. Okay, so that one's pretty straightforward. Nothing new there. Our next one, we've got all of this stuff. 2x plus 12 minus the quantity of 3x plus 2 all divided by 3. So there's a couple different ways you could start this. The first thing I'm going to do is let's just multiply by 3 and get rid of that over here, which is going to leave me with 2x plus 12 minus, in parentheses, 3x plus 2. 27 times 3 gives me 81. Okay, now you have to be careful, and I erase that. This negative, remember, it's like a negative 1 out there, so I'm going to distribute that negative to both of those. So 2x plus 12, this is going to be minus 3x, and minus 2 is equal to 81. 2x minus 3x is going to give me negative x. 12 minus 2 is going to be plus 10 is equal to 81. This is going to give me negative x is equal to 71. To get x by itself, divide or multiply by negative 1, and I get x is equal to negative 71. Okay. So then we get into actually doing stuff that's going to involve quadratics. So multiply the binomials. If you guys remember how to do this from algebra, it's FOIL, which tells us first, outside, inside, last. Okay, so if I have x plus 2 times 2x minus 3, my first is going to give me 2x squared. My outside is going to give me minus 3x. My inside is going to give me plus 4x. Last is going to give me minus 6. Now we combine our like terms. I get 2x squared. Negative 3x plus 4x is plus x. And then I get minus 6. Okay, so it's like reverse foiling. It's when you multiply two binomials times each other. Okay, on the next one, be careful with this negative out front. My first is going to give me negative 3x squared. My outside is going to give me plus 6x. My inside is going to give me plus 6x. And my last is going to give me minus 12. So we combine this, I get negative 3x squared plus 12x minus 12. Okay, so there's some multiplying binomials. Oh, don't tell me that my OneNote's going to quit working now. Let me try and back out. Hopefully I don't have to restart this video. Well, that's a bummer. Okay, I'm going to try killing this one time, and let's see if that did the trick. If not, you'll never hear this because I'll have to start this over. Hey, there we go. Cool. Okay, this one, I don't know why that shut off, but this one you should have gotten if you didn't see it. It was negative 3x squared plus 12x minus 12. All right, number 5 here, 3x minus 2 squared. Got to be careful. Remember, when you square something, that means multiply it by itself. So what I'm going to do is rewrite this as 3x minus 2 times 3x minus 2. Okay, now I'm going to FOIL it. So my first gives me 9x squared. My outside is minus 6x. My inside is minus 6x. And my last is going to be plus 4. This would give me 9x squared minus 12x plus 4. Be careful. What a lot of people want to do on this is take that squared and distribute it and go 9x squared minus 4. Notice that that is not the same thing as what you actually get down here. Okay, so don't make that mistake. That's a big no-no. X plus 3 squared is x plus 3 times x plus 3. So this is going to give me x squared. My outside, some of you guys are going to be good enough to skip this step. Outside is plus 3x, inside is plus 3x, and you'll be able to combine those in your head, which is awesome. You don't have to. And my last is plus 9. So final answer, when I combine x squared plus, not 3x, it would be 6x plus 9. Okay, so that's some multiplying binomials. And now we're actually going to do a little bit of factoring. We got to change one thing here on 7. I'm going to set this equal to 0. If you remember, factoring, what you always want to try and do is if I break this up and have it set equal to 0, only way I could split up x squared is x and x. And then we got to think about the factors of 6. So 1 and 6, 2 and 3. And I've got to think about how could I combine those so that my outside and inside terms combine to give me 7x. Just like we were adding the middle two terms here to get that middle one, that's what we're looking for here. So I look at these combinations and I see I got to get a 6 and I got to get a 1 because that would get me to 7. And if it's got to be plus 7x, both of those would have to be positive. So that when you add, like if we FOIL here, your outside gives you 6x, your inside gives you 1x. You would have to add them together, so they both got to be positive. Okay, now this is where our zero factor property comes into play. On this one, I will actually show setting it equal to 0. In future ones, I'm not, but we take x plus 1 equal to 0, x plus 6 equal to 0, and we end up with two answers. X equals negative 1, and x is equal to negative 6. Okay. Next one here, if we take a look, is going to require us to do some foiling. But before we do that, we've got a little work to do because I've got this whole quantity times an x. So I'm going to distribute that x just like it were a number out front, which is going to give me x squared minus 12x is equal to 64. From here, let's get everything on the same side. X squared minus 12x minus 64 is equal to 0. And now we've got to do some factoring, okay? Or at least see if we think it can factor. Now, there are a whole bunch of different ways that you can split up 64. You could do 164, 232. We can do 416. You can do 88. Okay, if we look at this, I'm looking for them to combine those two factors to get me a 12. So if I went x and x and I were to put a 4 and a 16 in here, and I need it to be a negative 12, that would mean 16's got to be negative, and this has got to be positive. Because again, my outside would give me minus 16x. Inside would give me plus 4x, which is what we want, minus 12x. Okay, so that's always a good way to check. Again, you would set them both equal to 0. We get two answers here, x equals negative 4 and x is equal to 16. Okay, so there we have that. Now, I don't know if these ones are going to show up on your guys' notes because for some reason they didn't on mine. If not, you're going to want to pause this, take a moment, and write these two down. First one we've got here is negative 2x squared minus 18x, and I'm going to move that 28 over and make that minus 28 equal to 0. Okay, a couple of different ways we can deal with this. The 2 out front complicates things, but it's nice because if I factor out a negative 2, a greatest common factor, that leaves me with x squared minus 9x minus 14. Nope, it would be x squared plus 9x plus 14 because I factored the negative out, okay? All equal to 0. Then I can divide by negative 2. This is really just gone. And I'm left with x squared plus 9x plus 14 is equal to 0. So now we've got to think, Could I possibly factor this? And the answer is yes, because factors of 14, 7, and 2 would get me to 9. If I added both of them, so they both got to be positive, this gives me x is equal to negative 7 and x is equal to negative 2. Okay, so now let's take a look at this one. If we tried to factor this, you could try it forever and ever and ever. It's not going to work because the only factors of 5 are 1 and 5. I could not combine those to get a positive 3. Okay, so when that is the case, we need to then use quadratic formula. Now, I want to mention this because some people get really good at quadratic formula. This will always work, quadratic formula. Factoring only works if it is factorable, but quadratic formula, no matter what, as long as you plug stuff in right, is going to work out. Okay, so I'm going to write this off to the side. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Okay, if we do that, I'm going to say x is equal to, b is my 3, so I'm going to say negative 3 plus or minus the square root. Now I'm going to square my b value right away. So I'm going to say b squared is 9, 3 squared, minus 4 times 1 times negative 5. Now be careful with how you type this in. This is 9 minus 4 times 1 times negative 5. If you type that into your calculator, and I'm getting ahead of myself, this is all over 2a, so it's just 2. This is going to give me x is equal to negative 3 plus or minus. This is the square root of 9 plus 20 because I got a negative there and a negative there. So 9 plus 20 is going to give me square root of 29, all divided by 2. So we have two answers that come from this, and we are almost always going to be rounding these. This really branches off into two separate pieces. This is x is equal to negative 3 plus the square root of 29 all over 2. And x is equal to negative 3 minus the square root of 29 all over 2. From here, you guys can type that into a calculator. This piece, negative 3 plus the square root of 29 over 2, is going to give me, if I go to 2 decimal places, 1.19 approximately. This one, negative 3 minus the square root of 29 over 2, is negative 4.19. So these would be my two answers to that equation if I solve using the quadratic formula. Okay, 11, same idea. X is equal to the opposite of b, so 3. No, not 3, that's a. Don't make that mistake. Maybe I'll write this up here, a, b, c. So x is equal to the opposite of b, positive 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared. B is 4, so b squared is 16 minus. Now I'm going to go 4 times a, negative 3, times c, which is 9. Okay. Again, this is minus, and this is going to come back as a negative value. I always forget to do this right away. Let's put this over 2a. That's over negative 6. When you simplify this on your next step, you're going to get 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 4 times negative 3 times 9 should come out as 124. And now this is all divided by negative 6. Okay, so again, my two exact answers would be 4 plus the square root of 124 over negative 6, and 4 minus the square root of 124 over negative 6. Okay, from here, typing them into a calculator, if I ask you to round, we should get that x is equal to, again, it's 1.19 when we round to the nearest hundredth, and x is equal to, the other one is negative 2.52 when we round. Okay, the key thing is make sure that you guys are able to type this into a calculator, because on the test you are asked to round to the nearest either tenth or whole unit. So you got to make sure you can type those in. Okay, so your homework is solving quadratic worksheets, which you can find in OneNote. I guarantee you have to solve by factoring and quadratic formula on the week 5 assessment. For the quadratic formula, it's the second sheet of the second page of the worksheet. Round to the nearest tenth for me. And that is all I got for you guys. Hope you have a good one. We'll catch you.